Welcome everybody to the Introduction to Mastercam series. This is going to be the beginner series. We're going to be going through teaching you how to use Mastercam from start to finish. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the first series, and in later series we're going to be going through more advanced parts and projects to learn from beginner all the way through advanced. So I'm actually running a remote desktop here, plugging into my work computer. So right now I have Mastercam open, as you can see. But first things first, just in case you haven't already downloaded Mastercam, in your Google search, you can go Mastercam Home Learning and Google that. It's going to take you to a download page where you can then enter in all of your information here. It's going to send you an email, and that's going to allow you to download the software. Keep in mind this is a pretty heavy program, so it's going to take a little bit of time to install, so just keep that in mind. Assuming you've already got that installed, we'll go ahead and open Mastercam for our first time. Now, when you open Mastercam for the first time, it's possible that you'll enter into the Mastercam design interface, which is the same as everything, but you won't have the toolpath tab here right away. Of note as well, you'll see that my Mastercam is in the dark version theme with the background here, with the stock colors here. So your Mastercam will look a little bit different, but that's no big deal since we don't really have to worry about that. Just to show you, this is sort of the basic interface here, but I'll go ahead and I'll show you another instance of Mastercam that I've got with a completed part. This is a complicated 5-axis part that we actually made for RoboSub, which is the main hull. It's called mid-cap for the main housing of the robotic sub. So this is about 8 inches and 8 inches and a half across and about 8 inches tall. But just to show you sort of broadly how Mastercam looks when you're actually creating a part program. We're not obviously going to be doing something as intense as this, but you can see how it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. I've got, in this program, 65 toolpaths in total, and that isn't including another program I wrote for this, which contains another 50 toolpaths. So quite a long list of stuff going on there. We won't really focus on that. I just wanted to go ahead and show you it. So back in our Mastercam interface here, similar interface to sort of SolidWorks and other CAD systems. Mastercam is a CAM system, hence the name. CAM stands for Computer-Aided Manufacturing or Computer-Aided Machining. So that's what this program is really for. You'll notice it's got a similar interface to your Windows programs like Word, Outlook, etc. with the tab style. In the olden days, we used to have just a bunch of really small icons up in this bar here, and it was really complicated, finding these tiny little icons what you need, so I much prefer this system a little better. Alright, so as far as Mastercam goes, you can see a lot of different sort of tabs here, each one denoting pretty basically what they do. So for wireframe, for example, I can come here, click a circle, and let's say anchor it to the center there, and I can say I want to make a 2-inch diameter circle, enter, click OK there, and now I have a circle. Alright, that's called wireframe geometry. Sometimes use it to create extraneous geometry for generating our toolpath. If I wanted to make a solid from that, I can go here and click extrude, much like any other SolidWorks or Onshape or any other CAD solid software. Create a solid there. And to delete items in your graphics view, select and press the delete key. Okay, so really quick, let's run over the differences between the CAM interface and the process for creating toolpaths using subtractive manufacturing versus additive manufacturing. So really quick flow here, flow chart. In the 3D printer world, it's pretty simple. You have CAD, and that's where you create your part. Obviously, you'll save that as an STL. You'll send it to your 3D printer, and then you're going to run your part. And that's pretty much it. You might make some refinements and run another batch, but that's pretty much it. A lot of times students don't realize how complicated CNC machining can get. So we start in a similar way with our CAD design there. Then we run it through our CAM software, creating what are called tool paths, and we'll explain what that means a little bit later. Run it through a post processor. I always describe that sort of as the photo editing phase. You know, if you're going to post a picture to Instagram, you might run it through different filters to get a different result, different outcome. So that's what that does for your specific machine. You'll need to know how to set up your CNC machine as well, so that takes another skill set that will be taught as well. You run your first part, and you measure your part after you've run it, and you see if there are changes that need to be made or optimizations that you can do for, let's say you're running a lot of them. And then finally, once you've proofed it out, made sure everything's perfect, then you can run a full batch. So this whole process is pretty involved, and it takes a long time. In this tutorial series, we're really going to be focusing on the CAM and tool pathing aspect of it. In later videos, we can run over some of the other things you can do with Mastercam. So, back into Mastercam here. We're going to be running a pretty simple part in this tutorial. Alright, so what I want to do is I actually got this offline in Fusion 360, and so I had to export it as a step file. Now when you go and you open a file in Mastercam, you can either, typically what I do, I'll go ahead and just close this. When I pull in a new part that a student gives me, I'm usually opening it as that file standard. So for example, if it was a SolidWorks file, I'll just go into my file and I'll open that SolidWorks file, and it'll come in as it would in SolidWorks. In this case, I want to actually use the merge function. So what merge does is it takes a model and inserts it into an already existing Mastercam file, which I've already got open right here. And that part is going to be the Mastercam Titan 1-M. So we'll select that. You might have to choose all files. It'll usually only include the Mastercam files here first until you select all files. So I'll open my Titan 1M, and I'll just click OK here, and it imports that part right like that. So it's importing it in the same way that it was created in the SolidWorks part program, or whatever CAD. In this case, it was Fusion 360. Your part will probably not come in looking like it's got all of this shading turned off, so I can turn that on and off by pressing down Control T right there. What I'm actually going to do is I'll leave that off. So if you've never used a CAD system, the way I'm manipulating this part is I'm pressing down on the center mouse wheel here and then panning and rotating around. Alright, I can zoom in and out just as any other application as well. Now I'll go ahead and shade this, Control T. I could also do Alt S, and that's going to make it a full wireframe setup so you can really see everything that's going on there in the model. I like to keep it on unless I need it off for some reason. In the perfect world, you would be using a dual monitor setup, a nice mouse. I use the Logitech G502. Really great. It's a gaming mouse, but it really works really well for CAD and CAM. I also use in the office a 3D mouse for my left hand, so I can pan and manipulate all at once without having to use my right mouse. So those are really useful if you're going to be doing a lot of CAD work. I recommend them. 3D Connection is the brand, and they run about $100 for the base model, all the way up to $400 something for the Pro, Elite, Supermaster, whatever you want to call it. So right here, I have my part, and this is the graphics window right here. As you can see, if I right-click in the graphics window, I can bring up some different views of the part, do little different things. I can analyze distance, say from here to this edge, wherever I want, random. It'll bring up my distance here, and the number I'll be looking at is usually the two-dimensional value or the axis that I'm measuring. measure anywhere. If I escape out of there, escape in Mastercam is generally going to clear you out of any screen that you're in. So I like to use escape quite a bit. If I right click, I can analyze entity properties. So for example, this radius right here, I can measure that radius. It's coming out to a 0.39 diameter, 0.195 radius. And if I wanted to, I can change colors, select my model here, right click, and this is my solid here, so I can change this to a red if I really want to go crazy. A lot of different options. So, go to a top view here. You'll notice this grid right here. I like to have the grid just as a reference, and you'll notice this red gnomon here. Additionally, you have these long axis lines right here. I can turn those on and off either in my View tab. I can either scroll over or simply click the tab I want. And in my display, I can turn on and off the axis display, the gnomon display, or the grid display as well. As far as hotkeys for those, F9 will turn off your axis displays, and then Alt F9 will turn off your gnomon displays. For the most part, I leave those on unless I really don't need them or they become confusing in more complex parts. This is a fairly simple component, so we don't really need to worry about that too much. If you wanted to change some colors here in this toolpath manager, you can change your colors here. I like the darker color with light text. I'm a sucker for dark mode. Now if I wanted to change colors here in the background as well, I can do that along with changing the size of my grid. So I have mine set to a 5-inch grid. Yours might default to, 25 inches is what it usually defaults to. If I want to change those functions, go to my file and my configuration here. Now there's a lot of stuff here that you don't need to worry about. Kind of like Mastercam as a whole, you really only need to use what you need to use when you need it. One thing I like to make sure is on is autosave here. So it's currently on and it's saving every 15 minutes, prompting me every time. So that way I have to tell it, yes, go ahead and save. If I am not sure about something or I'm testing out a toolpath and I don't want to save it, that way it's not going to overwrite automatically. I have the choice to do that. And in my view, I've got my grid. I can change the spacing of the grid, or I can change the size here. And then those colors are right here. Background gradient start, gradient end, and then a whole bunch of colors that you really don't need to worry too much about. So I'll go ahead and exit out. If you change something, it'll ask you to save. Just click yes. Okay, so I've got my grid, I've got my part. I'm pretty much good to go. And then go on to the next steps here. Just wanted to give you a quick view of Mastercam as a whole, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of those functions as they crop up. Your solid will usually contain the history if you bring it in from SolidWorks. In this case it does not, it's just a solid, sort of a dumb solid, there's no history or anything. And then we can get into different views here, as you can see, changing this axis orientation here. And then I like to use levels in more complicated components, and maybe I've got a vise that is displayed in here. I have that geometry on a separate level, and you can turn those on and off, which is really helpful when you've got a lot going on. Again, a simple component like this, you don't really have to worry too much about those features. So I suppose that's all for now, and we'll go ahead and get started on our next video with setting up the machine and all of the other stuff. See you soon.